Hey everyone, this is Rich, Plant-Based Coaches Podcast. I'm joined with Dr. Suzanne Fox. Also joining us is my friend Rob Lee and my
Hey
friend
everyone.
Tim Kaufman, who just wrote this book, Escape, and you have to read it. It's very inspiring. And Tim, I think it's going to be a movie someday. Quite a story.
Hi, Tim. Congratulations on your incredible health transformation.
Thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it.
So before we get started, I kind of wanted to open with a fun question since I do think it could be a movie someday. What do you think should be the theme song? Did you ever think about that? Is there a certain song that resonates with
Gosh,
you?
there's so many of them.
I'm sure.
I don't know. I don't know. It depends because there's like probably five different kind of genres that would be there because it was low times and high times, and
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a whole lot going on there. So you could have some
I'm
Rocky
sure.
mixed with some drama. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking Rocky myself. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you can take us back to the beginning, especially before your journey started, because I know you were more of a hunter for my audience, believe it or not. Now you're fully vegan, and I know you were obese. And if you could just take us back to the beginning before it started and how you got here.
Yeah, so sure, and just cut me off if you have questions or whatever. We'll just
Sure.
keep it super casual. So
Right.
probably you're right. Hunting, in fact, was such a large part of my life. I have the first big buck that I ever killed actually tattooed on me. Hunting was a huge part of my life. It was my culture. It was how me and my father connected. It was where my friends came from. It's what we did. This is what we spent our time. When we weren't actually hunting, we were getting ready to hunt. And, there was like off season where you're scouting and putting trails and stuff. So yeah, it was a huge part of my life. And another reason for that is, kind of the culture where I live. Even though I'm about 20 miles east of Buffalo, New York, it's very rural. 30 years ago, it was obviously more rural than it is now. Lots of farms around, and I got a job on a farm as a young kid at 14 years old. I started working on the farm. I liked working hard. I liked the manual heavy labor, and I started getting hurt all the time. And I just thought I was like a klutzy kind of kid, kind of twisting my ankles all the time and just kind of accident prone, really. And at this point, I met my wife. Well, she wasn't my wife then, but met Heather, which would later become my wife. So we were super young, 14, 15, started dating high school sweethearts. As I got a little bit older into my teenage years, we started talking about getting married at the ripe old age of 19 and 20. So I moved jobs from the farm to the factory. And in the factory, I started doing things that I wasn't used to doing on the farm. So mostly working over my head. And when I started working over my head, my left shoulder started popping out of the socket all the time. And it had gotten to the point where just the pressure from a sneeze would throw the thing out of the socket. And, here I am, just married. We have our whole life ahead of us. I have this brand new job. It's a super good job. It's in the UAW. And, I thought I was going to start there, retire there, just like my grandfather did and my father did. And now I got to go out of work, just literally months after I started for this surgery to try to put my shoulder back together. Found a doctor to do it, and he cut my back open to kind of tighten everything up in there. And when they started pulling stuff around, they said something's more wrong than just a shoulder. So I was diagnosed with this disease called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And basically, it's a genetic screw up where the glue that holds my body together is super stretchy, and my collagen is like almost like bubble gum. So the doctor actually filled out disability papers for me. I was in my early 20s, told me I would probably be in a wheelchair by 25, told me to go home and move as little as possible because I was already loaded with arthritis and my body was breaking down, in my early 20s. And that's kind of how we started life out. So, obviously this is a huge blow because I had big dreams and big goals, and I felt like that surgery kind of just took it all away with the prognosis. Another thing that happened during that surgery, I was prescribed some hydrocodone or Lortabs, and I found out I really liked them. I had never really taken medicine. We didn't visit a doctor much, and my mom was a stubborn German. And so I took these pills. They worked really well. I think part of that was because I had been in chronic pain so long, probably without knowing that that wasn't normal, that when I took these, it kind of muffled the pain. It certainly never took it all away, but it did take the edge off. And so I liked them. They were very effective. They worked very well. But as you know, in time, they work well until they don't. And then you have two choices. You either have to up the dosage of them or the quantity or both. And we did that until I got on Percocet. And then from Percocet, back in the early 90s, Oxycontin was getting dispensed like candy. It was an epidemic, really.
Yeah.
And so, this is a matter of, years, perhaps almost a decade. I was on these opioid tablets and never stopped. It wasn't like an acute injury. I was on them and off them. I was just on them. And, back then, things weren't as secure as they are now. So you could go to multiple doctors, have insurance pay for one prescription. They were relatively cheap, so you could pay cash somewhere else and no one knew the difference. Because they were just paper scripts, right? They weren't like,
And they're
so
always
I found
covered by
really
insurance, right?
what's that?
They were always covered by insurance too, right?
Yeah, they were always covered by insurance, but they were so cheap that I would just pay out of pocket for them and I could get more than I needed. So if I had insurance pay for one script, I wouldn't put that script through insurance. I would just pay out of my pocket, which, there was creative ways back then to get more medicine than you were prescribed, is what I'm saying. And I found tricks like going to going to doctors on the same day. So no one kind of knew what was happening. There was always like a 3-day delay. So you could get away with a lot more. So what this did is it made it so I was taking way more pills than I should have. And then, those kind of ran their course, and even the oxy became not as effective. And I was finding myself just taking medicine. So I wasn't sick, and I wasn't withdrawing. And my doctor wanted to try this new medicine with me that I had never heard of. And no one I knew had ever heard of it, but the drug was called fentanyl. Now, today we know what fentanyl is, but, 20 years ago, no one ever heard of it. And the fentanyl was a transdermal patch. So I would apply this and it looked pretty innocent. It looked like a little sticker. Yeah, I didn't understand how it could do so much, but basically my body had a 24/7 supply of fentanyl. And then along with the fentanyl, we were still using all the tablets for what they call breakthrough medicine or to stay ahead of the pain. And the fentanyl was, it was super effective, just like the pills were when I started, but it was that same cycle. It would work until it didn't, until we ended up maxing out on the fentanyl. So now I'm on the max dose of fentanyl, plus literally taking hundreds of opioids a week, handfuls of them. Some of them would come in like almost like Pringles cans. There were so many, and it just was never enough. And so my worst times were at night trying to sleep. I think my body was more supported in an upright position, but when I lay down, like my hips would pop out of the sockets, my shoulders would come out, and I was miserable and I just wanted to sleep. I had went about 5 nights with no sleep, and I grew up in a very conservative household, very strict. I never saw my parents drink. I never saw them smoke. The only time they swore is when I did something really stupid. And I don't know why I did this. I stopped at a liquor store and I picked up a 1.75 liter of vodka. I came home that night, and before I went to bed, I had a handful of pills like I did every night, popped them in my mouth, and I chased it down with an entire liter of vodka.
Wow.
Did
And
you
I
ever wonder
wish,
how you'd survive?
yeah, I should have been dead. I should have been dead.
Yeah,
That's
And
pretty
amazing.
crazy.
I wish I could tell you that I woke up the next day with alcohol poisoning, covered in puke, and I learned my lesson, but unfortunately, that was that. There was no ramp up like the drugs. It was just on, and that I would spend the next, better part of a decade drinking an entire liter of vodka right before I went to bed,
Oh
Wow.
my
and
God.
That was every day pretty much?
every single day, never missed a day.
Wow.
And what I think at some point, I was trying to escape this physical pain, probably pretty justifiably so, but something switched somewhere. And I think I was trying to escape emotional pain, maybe more than the physical pain. And I hated who I had become. I was manipulating Heather, I was manipulating my friends and family to get what I wanted, just to get that next fix. And I couldn't look at myself in the mirror anymore. And I think, that alone kind of added to the cycle to kind of keep escaping with whatever substance I could find. And the truth is, one of my favorite substances became food. And oddly enough, I'd go to Burger King, I'd get that same feeling, I'd get really excited waiting for my breakfast sandwiches. I would get the sandwiches, I'd get my 2 minutes of happy, then I'd look over and be disappointed because I just see greasy wrappers
Yeah, I can
on my
relate.
passenger
Yep.
seat.
Yeah.
And so these four substances, became all I really cared about. And just seeing how I could get through my day to get home to pass out again. And it just got into this terrible rut. And I had justified this all with thinking I had been dealt a bad hand of cards and I was playing it as best as I could. And by the time I was 38, I went into the doctor to weigh me, and that scale went up to 350. Then the little thing went all the way over and it didn't move the scale. And so by the time I was 38, I was over 400 pounds. I was on
Wow.
about 20 prescriptions a month, and not including, for pain. I mean, I guess like Indocin and stuff with anti-inflammatories, I guess you could say for pain, but I was on blood pressure, I was on statin, that I was on so many different pills, but so almost 20. My metabolic numbers were off the charts and I was going to die. My kidneys had shut down about 3 or 4 times, to the point where I couldn't urinate for a couple days. I knew exactly what was going on,
That's,
but I couldn't stop. I was in so deep.
Were you
I
on
just I couldn't
dialysis
get
at
out.
all during that time? Or
No, no, I would just wait and they would end up coming back. It scared the crap out of me because my father
sure.
had kidney failure in his late 30s. So I was worried that they
That
were
is scary.
shot.
Yeah.
But yeah,
did your dad require dialysis?
he did. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, wow. Did you have a job during this whole time?
Yeah, and I think that kind of fed me because I was very good at what I did. I'm a teacher. And I teach like engineering and college level engineering, to high school students. And I was
Oh,
getting awards. I was a very good teacher, still am. Um, and I think, when you're a functional alcoholic or functional user, it kind of feeds this arrogance because you can live in these two worlds at once. And it never occurred to me that, like, what if I didn't live in this other world? How really good, if I'm this good now, like, how good can I be?
Mhm.
So yeah, I was a high school teacher through this. Yeah.
wow.
Did
That's
any
amazing.
students ever notice? I mean, you obviously you didn't show up to school drunk, of course, but you were
No,
on the drugs.
no,
But
but I mean, I was always tired. Like I would learn tricks to go to school, and we have our planning periods or our lunch breaks. I would just like conk out in my room. I had a lot of trouble getting up and down from my desk because I was in bad shape. But I would go in there and just and get through the day. So no, my students wouldn't never. They know now because I
yeah,
do a talks to them. I'm able to teach. It's a big high school, and every student that goes through our school, thousands of them, hear my story. They watch Forks Over Knives, and I do a talk on recovery as well
Amazing.
as nutrition for the
that's
health
awesome.
classes.
Yeah,
So
That's amazing.
yeah.
That
yeah.
is amazing. So
So
what was rock bottom? Where did you hit rock bottom where you made the switch?
I mean, I suppose I had multiple rock bottoms, but probably the biggest one would come later. And well, I can actually get into that a little bit. The thing about rock bottom is I love sharing my story, but I would love it if people take stuff away instead of just hear a story that they may or may not care about. Rock bottom's a funny thing because I know for me, you wait for this rock bottom. Rock bottom can be today. Rock bottom can be this second right now. You get to decide where that rock bottom is.
That's
And
true.
if you don't decide in time, it's going to be death. And I think a lot of people have to understand it. They wait for this magical rock bottom, and it's now. It can be now. It doesn't have to be until things get so far out of control that you don't know which ends up anymore.
That's very true.
I tell people that I needed a ladder to get to the bottom of my hole. I was in so deep. But at any time, I had the choice. I could have made the choice to start digging out. But in any event, this kind of became the new normal. It kind of became almost like a full-time job or a business, trying to make sure I had all my lies straight, all the stories straight, make sure I could get everything I needed. And in time, addiction is a weird thing. You start out trying to get that high or get that escape, whatever you're looking for, and it works, but it gets less and less every time. And then before you know it, you're using or drinking just to kind of feel kind of normal. And then the last stage of it is, and this is an awful stage, you're just using so you don't get as sick. You get to
Wow.
that point where you're just trying not to get as sick because the withdrawals are so bad. And, fentanyl withdrawals are something I can't even talk about without getting emotional. But in any event, we're in this thing, doing life, 2 kids, new house, cars, and then all of a sudden Heather's mom, she had like a cold flu kind of thing. Her mom was just every bit as close as my mom was to me, because we started going out so young, right? Like I was always
Yeah.
hanging at her house
Yeah.
and stuff. Her mom was the coolest lady in the world. And we finally convinced her to take some time off work, go to a doctor, get checked out. And she was diagnosed with leukemia.
Oh,
And that was a huge switch. I don't think I have this like light bulb moment in my story, but I have these dominoes that kind of tipped over, right? And that was the first domino. We went from seeing who could get the kids to softball or basketball to who's going to stay with mom tonight, or who's going to go take this to mom tonight.
yeah.
And she was at this cancer hospital locally. It's a beautiful facility, lots of amazing things, a world-renowned hospital. And probably one of the first things that happened for me is everyone thinks, well, I'm this plant-based guy, but really the plants came kind of later. And the first thing that I saved my life was gratitude, actually. And it came with a very high price. So, I called her Ma B. Ma B is in this cancer part, and I won't get into all the details, but she was super tired. She was waiting on a transfusion. Her blood cells were wiped right out. She had zero immune system. And she was so tired. I remember walking up to the side of her bed, and she opened her eyes super slow and she goes, "How's your knee?" And those words just like cut through me. It's like, here this lady's like struggling to live another day, and she's worried about my knee because I complain that much. It shows you what kind of person she is, right? But it also showed me that, you know what? My knee sucks. It's ripped up, it's torn up, but in this hospital, someone's going to lose a leg tomorrow because of a tumor, and they do anything to have my sore knee. And
Good.
tonight I get to walk home, and there's hundreds of people behind me that will never walk out of that
Mhm.
hospital. And it really started reframing my perspective. Another thing real quick, they did some experimental chemo on her, and she was in the pediatric ward for this. And I'll never forget these little 4 and 5-year-old kids walking around with bald heads, and little masks on. And I'm thinking to myself, man, what are the parents going through?
Yeah.
These kids are my kids' age. What are these parents thinking? It's like, I got in the truck that night, and I'm like, I got healthy kids. I got a wife that would do anything for me. I got a great job, and I'm just blowing it all away. And so, that started reframing things for me. that, yep, my body was pretty banged up, but I had a body that I could at least get around in. Well, we're dealing with this. My father, we thought he had pneumonia. He went to get checked out. He got a chest x-ray to see how bad the pneumonia was. We found out it wasn't pneumonia, but it was stage 4 kidney cancer that
Oh,
had metastasized through his whole body, and it was just filling his lungs.
it's not
And
good. That's
as I
terrible.
said before, my dad was my best friend in the whole
Yeah.
world. We hunted
Oh,
together, fished together. We were best buddies. And here the doctor's saying he's got 6 months to live.
wow.
So dad didn't make it 6 months. He made it 6 weeks to the diagnosis, and he lost his battle with cancer. And so this is a long way to answer the question that you asked: is what was your rock bottom? I think my rock bottom was sitting by the side of his grave. I also think it was another one of those dominoes, because we all say that life is precious and we're not promised tomorrow, but this was real. Man, my dad was gone.
Very,
And I think, I had wasted so much of my life, and just to watch his life just get snuffed out at 65, it's like, man. And so I was trying to get off the pills before he died. And then once he passed away, I kind of relapsed to pretty heavy.
yeah,
And then
grief.
we buried dad, and then shortly after that, Heather's mom lost her battle with leukemia that turned to lymphoma, and ultimately a brain tumor would
Ooh,
take her life.
Wow.
that's
So
terrible.
yeah, it was a tough go, that part of our life. And we got young kids, and they kind of didn't really understand what was going on. And we were super close to both of those parents, and it was awful. And
What was
I
the time
don't
span?
know what's
What
that.
was the time span between them dying? Was it within a few months or?
Yeah, it was months. Yeah, I don't think it was a full year. It was months. I mean, it seems like a blur, because
Yeah,
you just get over one, and yeah.
that's tough. It
And
really is.
yeah, there's a lot of things in there, that people don't realize. Heather's mom was so sick. So somehow between all this, like, her mom and my dad got a connection. They were both terminal, and they were both going through the same kind of things. With they drove vehicles their whole life, and now they both kind of lose their license. They couldn't drive anymore, so they kind of had this little bond going. And then when my dad passed away, Heather's mom was so sick that she wanted to get out of that hospital to come to his funeral, and she just couldn't. And that just, there's all those kind of things that are tied in there too. But we're trying to get life kind of back to normal after the funerals. I guess we didn't realize what goes into all this, all the
Yeah,
planning. And for some reason, I don't know what made this day special. I came down, I put my socks on the table, and Heather kind of knew. Just, she didn't even ask anymore. She just knew to come over to put my socks on me, because I gotten to the point where I couldn't get my socks and shoes on myself anymore.
wow.
And she patted the side of my leg, and she said, "You're all set." And I don't know what hit me, but it's like, I'm the next funeral. And I don't really know that I cared. Like, I knew that I was going to go to bed one day and not wake up. Like, I knew that it was a given, and it was coming. I remember laying on the bed with the remote on my chest, and my heart would pound so hard that every beat you could actually see space under the remote. Like, that's how hard it was kicking off of there.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And I, I don't know why this is so weird, but all I could imagine was her planning my funeral. And I wasn't like worried about the fact that I was gone, or that I was just worried about her having to do another funeral, because I know how stressful that was. So I literally thought, you know what? I got to put some time. I got to give her some time, a break in between these funerals.
Yeah,
Mine's inevitable, but let's get her a little bit of time to heal from these first two. And I couldn't shake the feeling. I went to work that day. I remember, eating fast food for breakfast, couldn't shake the feeling. And so I decided I had to do something. So I did what all super smart people do. I went to YouTube and looked for an influencer to get some medical advice from. And I found this guy got this thing called bariatric surgery. he lost a whole bunch of weight. You know, he was every bit as heavy as me, over 400 pounds. And within a year, he's out running a marathon. I'm like, that's it. That's my button. So at the time, it was like Yellow Pages. So I go through the Yellow Pages. I find a place in Buffalo that does it here. Went to like a seminar, got a big old packet to fill out, a couple classes, and I had everything done except I had to get my doctor to sign off on it. And when I went in there that day, we had about an hour wait to get back to the examining room. And the nurse took my blood pressure and it was 255 over 115.
Wow.
Wow.
And yeah, and I was on a calcium channel blocker and a beta blocker. And I was on a pretty heavy dose too.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
crazy.
So he was freaking out. They took my pulse was like 125, you know, just laying there. So he was freaking out. He was getting ready to call an ambulance to get me to the hospital. Of course, I'm really good at manipulating. So we negotiated that I would just like lay there while he saw a few patients. Well, hopefully we get it under control. Blood pressure did come down a little bit. But we talked. We had a pretty tough conversation. And he said, I don't think your heart will make it through surgery. And he goes, with all the narcotics you're on, he goes, I don't know what they'd give you for pain after the surgery. It's a painful surgery. And I don't know what the anesthesia would do, you know? So he denied me the surgery, and I came home pissed and frustrated and disappointed, but also almost a little bit of relief, right? Because I tried, I did something, and going to bed that night, I'm like, well, I mean, I did what I could do. That was the only thing I knew how to do, was get the surgery. But you know, for some reason I kept getting brought back to Heather's mom. And again, without getting into details, because we don't need them, but her mom's brain tumor had got to the point it was very visible. And she was having trouble seeing, but she was still going in for radiation, you know, like every couple days. And so finally, you know, her doctor said, Carol, why are you doing this? And I'll never forget, she says, I just want to be here for my family.
Wow.
And I couldn't get those words out of my head. And I'm like, just out of sheer respect for Ma B and my dad, I got to try something. So, you know, this is another one of those things that, forget my story for a minute. This is a very important lesson that I wish I would have learned a long time ago. To do something. What I did was totally wrong. You know, I made all the wrong moves, but I did something. So what I did is, at the time, you know, Atkins was all the, you know, the crazed diet, kind of like carnivore or keto today. And I'm like, I'm going to do this Atkins thing. So that was the most popular one. That's what was out there. And the cool thing about this is I used to like kind of be shameful of that and stuff. But the reality is I at least made a connection with what I was eating to what was happening to my body.
Yeah.
That was a huge step.
Yeah.
And again, that step of doing something instead of just, you know, regurgitating in the same, you know, information and not doing anything. I did something. And it worked. I mean, and it was great for me, man. It was all my favorite foods. I could eat chicken wings and cheese and bacon. Like, these were all the things that I loved. And I did lose some weight. You know, I think I lost 40 or 50 pounds, but I was still feeling like crap. My cholesterol was, you know, still climbing on a statin. And my triglycerides were off the chart. My cholesterol was always over 300. And I believe I have it somewhere, but you know, my triglycerides were also like 279, 280 in there somewhere. So I was getting sicker. I was still in pain, but I sat down one night, turned on the TV, and I popped Netflix up, and there was a film called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And again, you know, I'm an old country boy from Alden. You know, we raised all our own animals. Very rare did I buy meat from the store because we butchered right here. There were times, I remember weekends, we would smoke over 300 pounds of meat. We drank raw milk right off the farm. I grew up on a dairy farm. When Joe Cross comes to the US and he consumes nothing but fruit and vegetable juice for 60 days out of his juicer, I didn't really see, I guess I saw, but I didn't really connect what he was doing. But I knew that at the end of this film, he had lost a bunch of weight. He'd got off all his meds. He inspired a whole bunch of other people to do the same. And I didn't really care what Joe was doing. In fact, if he would have been putting raccoon turds in that thing and that juicer, I would have done the same thing. I just wanted what he had. And so I bought a juicer without even thinking. And so that'll be about, oh, it's coming up on what, 12 years, 11 and a half years ago. I bought this juicer, and January 1st, I said, I'm going to do 30 days on juice, not knowing what I was getting into. And I remember the first time I made juice, I thought I had a lot of produce. I put it in the juicer and about a quarter cup came out.
Yeah.
We got a problem. So the cool thing about that, again, whether it was right or wrong, I don't know, but I did something. And the big thing that came out of that, looking back, was we started going to the store to buy produce. And, until then, our groceries were Totino's pizza rolls, Hot Pockets, chicken pot pies, fried chicken out of the box, anything that was fast and easy. We got kids, we got sports, we got careers, we got businesses. Heather had a pretty big business at the time. We were busy, so we needed fast and easy. And with fast and easy is hyper processed food. Yeah. And so it was good because, here I am, big 300 plus pound guy waving kale across the market saying it's on sale and getting all excited about it.
And just wondering what inspired or motivated you to adopt this amazing lifestyle.
So we learned how to start shopping. We learned about, produce companies. We started shopping where restaurants shop, actually. And, the first 3 days of the Juice Fest were freaking awful. It was awful. I was starving. I had a headache. By day 4, the hunger kind of subsided. And by day 5, I've told the story no less than 1,000 times. I get goosebumps every time I say it. Day 5, a miracle happened. And, I always had trouble at night sleeping. And day 5, I went to bed. And in the morning, I woke up in the same exact place I had fallen asleep.
Wow.
And it still chokes me up talking about it. It's like,
I'm sure.
5 days, 5 days. And, no one ever told me that, not only can food help me with the anti-inflammatory aspects, but, the food I was eating was all inflammatory. The salt, the oil, the sugar, the animal products, all this stuff was major inflammation on an already screwed up, body that's full of inflammation from all the arthritis. They were checking me for RA. So it was like this, you eliminate all these, inflammatory foods, then you just drowned yourself in nutrients. So in reality, my body had wanted to heal. I just wasn't giving it the tools. So I was overfed and way undernourished. I was getting no, vitamins, minerals, nothing my body needed to heal. And so, here 5 days, is pretty amazing. And, as the fast went on, my eczema cleared up. I was loaded with acne all the time, and that all went away. My eyes weren't as cloudy anymore. Sleep apnea started going away. Started feeling better, more energy, obviously losing a ton of weight in the process. And then I'm about day 20. I'm like, oh man, like, what am I going to do? I can't do this for the rest of my life. But because I watched Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, Forks Over Knives popped up in my queue. And I tell people, Forks Over Knives didn't just save my life. It literally gave me a completely new life because I learned that I could eat what I was juicing, the wonderful fruits and vegetables and leafy greens, but I could add some whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. And I had, a plant exclusive diet. And that's kind of where my journey began. I started losing weight, the meds started dropping off, and kind of mixed all in between there. I remember standing over, Joe Cross had this drink that he liked to make called Mean Green. And it's like kale, cucumber, green apple, I think some ginger in there. And I can remember standing over my juicer, like juicing this all down, and I'd have a big, huge lip of Copenhagen snuff in my mouth. And I love the taste of the Copenhagen and the kale. It made this beautiful flavor. And one day I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm drinking kale juice with tobacco in my mouth. So
Yeah.
I got a new perspective on, we can't just we can't just do this food thing. We got to like take care of the stuff that's hurting me as well. And so that's, by this point, I think I had gotten off the pills. I quit the alcohol cold turkey. And the fentanyl, it was petrified. I wanted to get to a clinic for it. It's very, very terrible stuff. And I strongly encourage people to go get help, go get into a clinic or a rehab facility. For me, I knew that fentanyl was going to be a nightmare. I think the tablets were almost easier because I would binge on them so much. I mean, I could take 100 tablets in a day and
Wow.
run out. I would just run out. And my body was so used to the withdrawals and then withdrawals that kind of I was able to weather that. But the fentanyl, I hadn't been off that in years. And like I say, that wasn't an up and down. That was a constant. So what I did is I looked at facilities, working in the public sector. I was embarrassed. I felt so much shame, but I knew I wanted to get off of it. So I thought about it real hard. Of an engineering background, and I took a pair of dial calipers and I made a little template up for myself. And every time I put a new patch on, I cut off a 16th of an inch.
Oh, wow.
In time, I got to that last patch and held it up, and it was too small to put on. So
Oh my goodness. So you got off of it yourself without having to go to a clinic.
yeah,
How
just
That's
long did
little
that
by
process
little.
take?
Oh, it took a long time, months and months. Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
yeah. But yeah, so I mean, at some point in there, I'm missing a lot, but I don't know how many details you want. But one of the other things cool that kind of happened and it kind of glazed over. Um, I was a big Harley guy, Carhartts,
Mhm.
and writing was something that other people, weirdos, did. We don't write. I think I got went to eighth grade English. I ended up dropping out of high school with eighth grade English and math. I would go on to get 7 degrees, 4 in engineering, 2 in education, a couple of
Right.
masters and
Yeah.
beyond. I just wasn't real interested in school. It's ironic that I'm a teacher, but the point there is writing was what the weird kids did. And I remember, back when I did the Atkins thing, when I said it's time to do something, I asked Heather if she had a small spiral notebook. And she said, well, I have one. The kids used a few pages. So I tore those pages out. And I sat down that night and I wrote the date, and I wrote, this is the first day of the rest of your life. And I wrote down what I had eaten that day. And I started an entry for the next day. And I kind of made a plan of what I was going to eat. And it was like turkey burger kind of stuff. And I remember at the bottom, I put EX for exercise, and I put chair times 2. And about a week prior to this, I had gotten out of my, I was in my office. I went to get up out of my desk, and I pushed so hard on the handles from my chair, I broke them right off.
Oh my God.
And it was awful. I was so embarrassed. And
Yeah.
one of my buddies that I work with, he's like, that chair's seen better days. He rolls me in a new chair, and he's like, that thing's junk. I'll go toss it for you. But I knew that if I could get up out of a chair once, then I could sit down and do it again. So like, I look now, like literally before we got on, I did over a 50-mile ride, like literally, an hour ago now.
Wow.
And that's my exercise today. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, but back then that was the same effort to get
Yeah.
out of the chair twice,
Yeah.
just doing something,
Yep.
And the cool thing about that journal, and I guess I really never thought about this till I was writing the book. At the bottom of the page, like I felt like I should write something at the end of the day, like, so how'd it go? And I just put at the bottom, like, you did good. And that was the first act of self-love that I could remember.
Oh,
It was there. And I couldn't take it away, and I couldn't go back to that self-loathing place because I did something good.
You did.
And, you know, that was kind of the start of, you know, celebrating like mini wins. And, um, you know, I almost hate getting into all the activity stuff. You know, somebody with EDS probably shouldn't be doing the stuff I'm doing, but I do it anyways.
It
So
feels
yeah,
good.
so that's the nutrition kind of part. I don't know if you want to go to the activity stuff or
I
not,
would,
but
because
that's
I'm curious when you started to run during this journey.
yeah. So well, I was having trouble walking, you know, and I remember I was a big dude still, and Heather was, you know, kind of she would take the kids for walks and stuff, and she asked me to go for a walk one time, and I'm like, why would you walk when there's a car? You know, it made as much sense as writing a journal, right? Like, why would you walk when there's a perfectly good vehicle in the driveway? But I felt awful because it kind of snapped at her, and then I felt guilty. I'm like, yeah, I'm coming. So at the time, braces weren't working for me anymore. So they had me in immobilizers, and I'm sure Suzanne, you know, like a mobilizer will lock you right out. Like
Yeah,
it's
you can't.
like you're walking on sticks.
Yeah.
Those what that's all they could use to brace me, because everything else I would probably my weight had a lot to do with it. Like I would just warp the brace.
It's
They
so
weren't.
hard to find. They don't even make the right braces for anybody that's really big. It's just that the legs don't fit right, nothing fits
Right.
right. It's awful. You know more than anyone.
Yeah, and they'd end up cutting to my legs, and I'd be a
Yeah.
bloody mess by the end of the day. So the doctor just put me in these, you know, like you would do this for a, you know, an acute thing.
Yeah.
But that's what they wanted me to live in, right? It's these immobilizers, and they just locked my knees straight out. And I learned I probably screwed up my hips with the things, but so in any event, this is what I went for my first walk. And the goal was we got these rails to trails things here. We were going to walk 3/4 of a mile out, 3/4 back, and I couldn't make the turnaround.
That's ambitious.
Got almost there. And I can remember, you know, the kids are running around, and, you know, I was miserable, and they took my picture. And now the picture's like floating around everywhere. But yeah, Heather's like made a game out of it. She goes, we gotta go get dad. Let's run back to the car. We gotta rescue dad. And so they ran back, drove the car around, picked me up, and I felt awful, but I came back and put a bunch of frozen vegetables on my knees, and I wanted to go back and finish that stupid walk. Like that walk ticked me off. So I went back the next weekend, and I finished the walk. And from there, I started walking a little bit more, started shedding the mobilizers a little bit. And I started walking, and then I started going back into the woods. Well, you know, before that, you know, I used to call myself an outdoorsman, but we'd sit on four-wheelers and drive to tree stands. And so I started walking trails, you know, and we have some beautiful trails around here, beautiful scenery. And, you know, 1 mile turned into two, and two turned into four. And my cousin came over, and he showed me these pictures from a hike that he had taken the past weekend. And he went to the Adirondacks, and he was showing me pictures of the summits of these high peaks. And he said something to me. It was another one of these dominoes that tipped for me. He said something that he literally changed my life with these words. I was looking at him like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I have never seen something so beautiful. He goes, well, you know, the pictures don't do it justice. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure they don't. But he goes, you know, something else. He goes, I stood up there and I thought, do you realize how few people ever get to see this with their own eyes? Oh man. I'm like, I think I'm going to climb a mountain. And so
Awesome.
I went to the same doctor that denied me the surgery. And I said, look, I'm going to be climbing a mountain next year. So we got to do something with these things on the knees. And instead of laughing at me or telling me, you know, EDS people don't do that, go home and sit down. He said, okay, we're going to get your legs cast. So they sent me to a prosthetic place. They casted my legs, sent them off to California, and they made me this real nice, you know, custom carbon fiber titanium braces. And man, did I beat them up. I still have one of them. It's all scarred up from the side of
Good.
mountains, but I couldn't really do stairs that well because my knees had my legs had so much atrophy from my knees being locked out. But we had, Heather had a cleaning company at the time, and I would go after school at this one school she had a contract with, and I'd start doing 5 stairs, and the next day I'd do 10, and then 10 turned to 20. And before I knew it, in months I was doing hundreds of stairs, just walking them up and down until I got so many that I just had to start timing it. And then I got a big poster here in 2012. We set off to climb my first big mountain, and that would have been Big Slide Mountain. And I got about 3/4 of the way up, and I couldn't make it, just couldn't do it. Came home and we regrouped, and 2 weeks later we went back and I summited
Oh,
my first high peak. So that was a good day.
an accomplishment. You set a goal, you made it happen.
Yeah, 4,700 foot climb.
Wow.
It's cool standing up there. Yeah, by this time I had one brace still on, and all I could think about was a wheelchair. You can't get here in a wheelchair. Like,
Yep.
and then I fell in love with the mountains, and I would climb anytime I could. And the way I was eating, my inflammation was held at bay. I was getting stronger, so my muscles were taking over. My joints were weak. From there, this thing was coming to our town called Tough Mudder, and I thought, oh man, that would be kind of cool to do a Tough Mudder. And so we signed up for that, and the plan was to power walk. Though it's about 13 miles. We're gonna like power hike it, and I don't know, something in my head wanted to give a little trot, and I knew I wasn't supposed to be walking, especially walking on uneven surfaces, and jogging wasn't even talked about. But I after the Tough Mudder, I said, "Hey Heather, I think I could run a 5K," and she goes, "Isn't that like a marathon?" I'm like, "Yeah, but we could do it." So we started training for a 5K, and we worked our butts off. And I've been through a lot of finish lines, and that was the most beautiful finish line I've ever been through. Um, we got so emotional, they thought something happened out on the course. So on the way home, I kind of gave her a nudge, and I'm like, "Hey, what about a 10K?" She goes, "Are you nuts?" I almost threw up. Like, I'm not doing a 10K. And about 2 months later, we were able to do our first 10K together.
Nice.
And on the way home, I kind of gave her another nudge, and I said, "What about half marathon?" She goes, "You're nuts. I'm out." And it was weird because I had this handicap parking permit. It was like my security blanket.
Yeah.
I needed that thing ever because I was in graduate school and stuff, and I couldn't get to class without this thing. And through like the past year, it's like, I don't really need it. So I ended up setting it on my dresser, and it was going to expire in September. And that was the same month of our big Niagara Falls, the mighty Niagara half
Wow.
marathon. So
That is
I knew,
amazing.
yeah, I thought it would be so cool. I wish I would have done this, but I didn't do it. But I thought it would be super cool to park in a handicap spot legally to run my first half. I ended up not parking there, but I knew it was going to be tough, so I took a picture of her mom and my dad and my family, and I taped it on there and punched a hole through that thing, and I ran my first half marathon with that thing dangling around my waist, and it was a great day, And from there, I got into marathons and then
Yeah.
ultra marathons,
Oh
and
my
then
God. Yes.
cycling, and an Ironman, and all this other craziness. But Heather's come along the way, for about
Oh,
2 years, she wasn't plant-based, and she had to go in for a surgery, and she was flashback to all the stuff with her mom. And she came out of the hospital that day, and she goes, "You know what? I can't control a lot in life, but I can control what I eat." And she, boom, switch foot. I remember the next day I'm like eating a pretzel, and she looks at me, she goes, "That's processed and there's salt on there, right?" I'm like, "Really, dude?" But yeah, so and she went on to be, I run to finish. She's actually a competitive runner, and she's a beast.
yes.
And we've
I
been
see her on
on,
Facebook. She's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
yeah. So, you know, people have to realize that your poor decisions affect a lot of people around you. You know, it's not just you. Like, you're not alone in this decision making. But you know what? The cool thing is the good decisions that you make, you know, people around you are affected too. So, um, there's a few people walking around there, you know, eating whole food because I made the choice to do that, and I think that's kind of cool.
Very cool.
Did your
That's,
kids follow suit?
Yeah, I mean, my kids are kind of older now, of 130 and 127, and the 30-year-old's in New York City. So I suppose he was like 100% vegan, junk food vegan. And I'm just guessing that he's probably 90% vegan. You know, he's vegan when he can be.
yeah.
Um, and then my daughter, yeah, she does mostly vegan, we'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my oldest son's a vegetarian, and then my youngest son, he goes back and forth between the two. They're 29 and 32, so I totally can relate to that, you know?
Yeah, you know, they got to make their own decisions.
They do.
Yeah, of course. I do have a few questions, especially about the EDS. Do you consider yourself in remission, or do you think
No,
such a
it's
thing?
awful. Sorry. Well, you know, and my views, I don't know if they've changed. I guess a few things have changed since I went whole food plant-based. I think that's important to talk about. Like, I think the biggest advantage I have when I transitioned is I didn't know a lot. And I think that was what helped me. I knew that I could eat, you know, grains, lentils, potatoes, vegetables. That's what I knew to eat. And I would just put that on repeat. And I was great with that. We ended up starting a plant-based restaurant. You know, we learned about cashew mac and cheese and soy curls and all these things. That's, you know, that stuff for me is trouble because I'm a food addict, and you give
Yep.
me a couple of soy curls and some barbecue sauce and it's game on.
I know.
But as far as the EDS, so you know, I used to have this attitude like, oh, your arm's falling off, eat some kale, we'll fix. Plants don't fix everything. And I think that's important to understand, because I feel like a lot of people quit this, you know. And another thing that I fell into, the trap of, oh, if whole food, you could just eat as much as you want. And that's, for me, my personal opinion, that's crap. Like, you can't. You know, you can't do that. And I'm not saying that you should sit here and measure calories and things like that and weigh your food and stuff, but it's not a free for all. Like, it's the most healthful way to eat, but it's not the end all to end all. You know, it can't fix everything. And I think when we put it in this box that it's this magic miracle, yes, it's the best way to eat. It's the most optimal way to eat for your health. It's the best for the animals. It's the best for the environment, but it doesn't fix everything. But that's okay. You know, and I think we need to realize, like, you're going to have bad days. You know, when I end my talks with high school kids all the time, I'm like, look, at life sucks sometimes. And these past 3 years, I mean, I thought I had issues before, right? Like with the addiction and all this stuff. But the truth is, I set all that up for myself. That stuff I did. I made a choice to take a drug. I got hooked on it. I made a choice to eat at Burger King. I got sick. You know, change all that, do everything optimal, take care of your health. Health is a priority. Your mindset's a priority. Gratitude, all that stuff, do everything, you know, I'm not saying perfect, but right. And the next thing I know, I wake up one day, I lift my hands up over my head to stretch, and my legs turn off.
Oh,
I lose signal to my spine. Done.
oh,
Jellyfish, done. Can't even lift my toe over a mat.
oh my
Um,
goodness.
you know, and then they try to fix my ankle by breaking it. You know, they put micro fractures all over it, put some anchors in it. And for 3 years, I couldn't put weight on the stupid thing. I worked on one leg. It was awful. You know, the thing was bleeding inside. My bones turned all black from all the blood. And I'm eating right. I'm doing everything right,
Yeah,
you know. And
yeah.
then I go to get it checked out by another doctor, and he said, well, we could do an amputation. I'm like, are you
Oh,
freaking
No way.
crazy?
Yeah.
Like, so No, I'm EDS is not in remission. It's a genetic screw up, and plants can make the pain a lot easier to
Makes it
deal with.
manageable. Yeah.
Don't take any pain medicine, but I mean, my joints are falling apart. They told me I should probably go back to the spine thing. So what happened with that is I had so much arthritis. It was like massive stenosis.
Yeah.
And I was trying to stretch. I got on a chin-up bar trying to like open that spine up, and I probably knocked something loose.
Yeah.
And it was, they were testing me for 2 weeks for ALS, scared the living crap out of us. Like he was doing all these brain stem things. Like it was scariest time
Well,
of
he
my
has to
life.
rule it out. He has to rule it out.
Yeah,
You
well,
know?
he didn't just rule it out, because what happened was they started taking all these pictures. He thought there was something else going on. They found the stenosis, but he said
Yeah.
something else is wrong. And insurance then stopped the brain scan. So then we had to wait, and the waiting was just awful. But yeah, he did have to rule it out. I eventually got ruled out. I got a 4-level laminectomy and about 31 staples up my back. And
You had to deal with the stenosis, right? All the bony
yeah, they
stuff.
took all
Yeah.
those bones out and just
Mhm.
threw them out. And I begged him not to put a cage in me. I'm like, I still got some jobs I got to do. And he was super cool. I had a really strong core. It's wild because even though I have EDS, at the time I had a 500-pound deadlift, but if I move my
Incredible.
thumb, I could pull my thumb. It's so weird. But I'm strong. I had a really strong core. And because I had a strong core, they didn't cage me right away.
Nice.
By cage, I mean put rods, put those rods and screws in. So, because then he didn't know if I could get back on my tri-bike. Anyways, that surgery turned out great. I was walking 5Ks about 4 days out of surgery. I was back on my bike for 30-mile rides with staples still in tow.
Holy cow.
So I did really well with that one. The ankle fusion, best thing that ever happened to me. Instead of the amputation, they gave me a fusion. They cut about 4 inches of my fibula out and jammed that between my my oh my gosh, I have a TT fusion. So it's a tibia and talus bone.
Talus, yeah.
And then screwed all that together. They said I would never run, much less walk fast. And I've run thousands of miles in the past couple of years from that.
Worked.
But I'm doing well. So that's a very long question to say no.
Yeah.
It didn't fix my EDS or put it in remission.
And my last question, I know Suzanne has some too, but I think it was a blessing in disguise that you were denied that surgery, the gastric bypass.
Sure.
But do you ever think about if that did go through? Do you think you would have learned anything afterwards that would led you to this lifestyle? Did you ever think about that?
I do think about that. I say it's the best thing that never happened to me.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own path on their journey, and I think if we have an open mind, we're going to come. I think that if people are actually seeking truth, they will find it. But I will say that I think the bariatric surgery would have just prolonged the inevitable for me, because at some point, and if you talk to people that are successful after surgery, it's not as easy as a surgery. The surgery is maybe a nice reset, but you're still going to have to learn how to fix this up here. And the surgery doesn't fix that. You have to do that.
Yep.
Right.
So I have a wedding here. I have 100 pounds. None of that matters. Doesn't matter if you have 200 pounds to lose, 50 pounds to lose, no pounds to lose. You just want to get healthy. It's just one choice. Everything after that is just a matter of time. And I think people need to understand that this is not magic. I never had willpower. I'm not really good at too much, but I just keep that next choice in front of me, and it's out there for anyone. And that's what I love about this lifestyle, really.
Definitely.
Definitely.
What do you eat in a day?
Today it'll be a lot because I have a 6-hour race tomorrow. So I'm not a big breakfasty guy. It's so ironic because old Tim was all about breakfast, sausage and eggs and cheese and stuff. So I don't really do breakfast that much because usually I'm going to try to get a workout, especially I'm training for Placid now. So a lot of times I'll have 7 or 8 workouts for the week. So I have to double in a day. So many times I get up early before work, do a workout, and I'm not feeling hungry. I do, if I am going to do breakfast, like tomorrow, I'll have oats and oatmeal and berries. I eat really boring lately. I've been super boring. I'm trying to up. I know we're not supposed to say this word, but I'm going to say it anyways because it's helped me through a lot of my surgeries is protein. Um, so I'm focused more. I'm not like I don't get obsessed with it, but I am consuming more protein because I am starting to train a lot harder now. My body doesn't recover like it used to. So I have been eating a ton of black beans and I'll make my whole Instant Pot. I like spicy stuff. So I'll do like I don't measure anything, but I'll do like 2 parts water to 1 part bean, fill my whole Instant Pot up. And I do like red pepper, cumin, chili powder, garlic powder, onion powder. I just let that cook for 30 minutes and then I portion them all up in 1.5 cup servings and I freeze them. They're like little hockey pucks.
Are those
So
pre-stuffed beans?
no, dry, I cook them from
Yeah, huh? Wow.
scratch.
Okay, wow, that
Yeah.
works.
And I get about 2 pounds in my Instant Pot and it fills it right up to the top. And I portion them out because we used to have a restaurant, so we still have a lot of stuff left. So I portion them in 12-ounce containers, and I take them right in our downstairs freezer, and they're just like stacks of hockey pucks. And
Mhm.
so I eat about 2 of those a day. I generally eat a whole brick of tofu throughout the day, and then I do my grains. I like brown rice and yesterday I had some basmati rice and tofu and broccoli. Most everything I eat is going to be on a bed of greens. Most everything I eat, like when you look at our food pictures, I always start out with a big gob of I like spring mix with all the different stuff. Heather
Mhm.
likes spinach. So I always make my plate. I start out with the greens and then I go from there. But mostly beans, greens, tofu, and
Rice,
grains.
yeah.
Yeah. That's-
And I
yeah.
pound some fruit during my snacks are fruit. Like I pound fruit during the day too.
Nice, nice. So, where do people find you? I know there's Fat Man Rants. Um,
Yeah, anything Fat
that's
Man
it.
Rants. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah,
yeah.
that's probably a poor name, but it worked.
It works, very effective.
And your book is on Amazon. Is it anywhere else too, or
I'm looking. I got a case. I mean, it was so cool. Like we sold thousands of books. It was so cool. Um, but
Great.
there's probably if you go on my website, there's probably under 20 signed copies left. I don't know if we're gonna re-up that because we're gonna be out of town a lot for the
yeah,
next couple months. But yeah, so Amazon, it's also Audible. If folks can't afford the $20 or whatever, we put the Kindle as cheap as we could. I think it's under $5.
Wow.
Which probably not a good business move, but it just ensures that
just get your
everyone
story out there. Yeah,
You have
can
so much
read it if they.
heart. Yeah, so much heart. Yeah.
Well, we've been blessed a lot too. Like yeah, even with the restaurant, we just sold the restaurant. That's a whole nother interview. Oh my God.
Yeah. I want to hear that. Yeah.
Well, the super condensed version is so I was teaching plant-based classes through my school district,
Yeah.
like community ed. I live about 30 minutes from school. We kind of live out in the country. And I'm like, this is cool, but let's get something closer home. This is how they would have to tote the Instant Pot, the air fryer. Like she said, toting all this stuff every week. So I said, look at the time we had a veggie burger company was expanding pretty rapidly, and we needed a hub just to put freezers. And I'm like, let's lease a spot close to home. I think it's like 6 miles from our house. We'll make it a burger hub, but then we'll make this community center so we can teach people. And we were going to do free classes. And then Heather knows a couple coffee roasters. She had fancy
Right.
coffee in
Yeah.
there and everything was going cool. And then we were teaching Thursday night classes, packing the place out, 30
Yeah.
plus people every time, maxed it out. Just plant-based 101, oil-free dressings we do one night, air fryer 101, and it was cool. And then COVID happened. And
Yeah.
so I live in New York here, and they're like, nope, you're done. And I'm like, oh, wait. We're a grocery store is what we are. We're a grocery store. So we're essential. We made some phone calls, and we bought some wholesale beans and nooch and spices and kind of pantry kind of goods. And then we're in this neighborhood that there's like a lot of food workers that lost their job overnight. They couldn't get unemployment that fast. Everything was taking time, and they literally were hungry. Well, we had just ordered like literally semi-truckloads full of equipment from New Jersey. So I said, let's bring some equipment over here. We called an electrician, and we started cooking food for these people, and we called them good neighbor meals. They could come get 4 meals, but they had to take 2 with them to hand out to someone else because we needed to distribute them. I can either cook or deliver. I can't do both. So people would come down if they were hungry. They grab 4 meals, take 2 extra, take them to someone else, and we label them, Flourish Good Neighbor Meals. And it was just beans and rice. It was really like plain food, and people loved them.
Yeah,
And
delicious.
then people started saying, hey, we want to get involved. They would give us donations to go buy stuff, and it kind of grew. And then COVID kind of calmed down a little bit, and people started getting unemployment checks like, well, we don't want free food anymore, but we want to buy your food. And I'm like, well, I guess we're doing meal prep now. So in 3 years, so Heather has at this time, has a huge commercial cleaning company, 70 some buildings a week. I'm teaching full time, plus running a robotics club. And plus our online business. Now we start this, and in 3 years, we sold 55,000 meals out of that place.
Just incredible. It's just
It was,
incredible.
it was awful. It was awful. We were so tired. We were working so hard. Then we got a staff. We had a great staff. We hired a crew, and it opened up into a whole, like almost like a restaurant, right? Because we did, takeout, and then people could come pick up 5 meals for the week, and then they could also eat in, and it was a great experience. But I'm really glad someone bought it at the last minute. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
awesome.
time to promote your book now.
Oh, Rich wants to promote the book. Yeah, buy the book if you want. If not, that's cool
it
too.
gives you extra time to promote now that you don't have the restaurant.
Oh, yeah. It does. I'm probably gonna not. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, it'll take its own wings. And we got like 80 some reviews already, and hopefully, it'll do its thing. But I got to move on to others. I got Iron Man.
Yeah,
That's
The
right.
last one.
You're amazing. You're absolutely amazing.
You are.
I appreciate
I've
it.
always been inspired by you, honestly.
Yeah, we're
I'm
gonna
about
slow down.
beans.
What's that?
I'm about to go make some black beans. I'm just going to follow your recipe.
I love beans. Yeah.
I'll
I
make that happen.
swear,
Yeah.
like I'm not even kidding. I got the beans out on the counter already. As soon as I tried to get them in before, but it's a great, during the weekend. So what I do, I'll make the beans, and then I got big baking sheets. I'll spread them out because they take forever to cool. So I'll try to cool them kind of quicker because they take forever. But man, they freeze so good, and I take them to work frozen in like a hockey puck. And by the time I'm ready to eat lunch, they kind of, they thawed a little bit. Get them in the microwave, and dunzo.
Nice.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah, fast food.
Yeah.
Exactly. The best
But not
kind.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm
We
sorry for
appreciate
talking
it.
your ears off.
No,
Oh,
I
no,
appreciate it. I
every
really do.
minute.
Yeah, you have such an inspiring story.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
I talk to you
Bye-bye.
later.